Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Really excited for today's podcast. I got Daniel Hill back on the podcast, new and improved audio. So we're really excited to talk about ways to release and address previous trauma, past trauma. There's going to be a lot of tools, right? Your conventional ways of dealing with it is talk therapy for years and years and years, which may be fine to help address and kind of wrap your head around what's going on in your life. But we want additional tools that are going to try to get to the root cause. Excited to have Daniel back. Daniel, how are we doing today?
Uh, I'm very good, thank you. It's a wet day in England, overcast, but I'm in good spirits. Always good to talk to you.
Awesome. Very cool. And then we put your coordinates and your link down below here if you guys want to reach out. Your site's down, but hopefully be back up soon. But we have a schedule link if someone wants to do a discovery call with you to reach out to see if you're a good fit to kind of help with some of these tools and kind of address some of these past trauma. We'll put a link down below. People can reach out. So that's there for y'all as we go. So Daniel, first off, kind of tell me like how you got to this place where you're like, hey, the conventional talk therapy type of ways to address trauma and emotional stress aren't working. What made you look for a better mousetrap, so to speak, to address these issues?
Because I wish to change my own life. First and foremost, it was
Yeah.
I was looking to grow and expand and move beyond limitations that psychological healing hadn't been able to address. So I started to go deeply into the unconscious. The first port of call was hypnosis. And I was fascinated about hypnotism and then hypnotherapy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. But then I just went deeper and deeper, and there are so many different tools out there. And really, my nature is a questioner and I'm an investigator. And so I just kept discovering more and more things that you can continue to discover. So I'm a connoisseur of all different things that improve our emotional well-being, where we have traditional talk therapy is about psychological well-being, and that's an important part. I still do that part. It's a necessary part in my work, but we're equally addressing the unconscious with the emotional aspects. And I know you've done podcasts before on tapping with
Hmm.
I can't remember his name now. Yeah, you've
Yeah, I
talked
know what you're
about the
talking about.
tapping technique anyway, haven't
Yep.
you?
Yep. We
EFT.
talked about the EFT, the different tapping techniques. Yep, that's correct.
So you've got an understanding. I know that Dr. J does a little of this from time to time and recognizes that you don't have to do the whole form of tapping. You can just find certain tapping points. Like, for example, if everybody who's on this podcast is watching, and the ones on YouTube after, and all the other social media parts, just start tapping this point. Just start tapping this point. Just one point.
So we have these different meridian points essentially, and then energy kind of flows through these different meridian points. These are the same kind of meridian points that an acupuncturist may put a needle into. And essentially, we have energy flow going through our body, whether we call it our nervous system, whether we call it chakras, whatever terminology, we recognize there's some kind of energy, whether it's blood flow or nervous system energy. And essentially, when there's stress or trauma, sometimes that flow gets disrupted, correct? And so we're trying to almost smooth it out. Is that kind of
Absolutely.
the thinking of that?
Absolutely. It's releasing. I saw an acupuncturist all the way back in the late 90s, and he talked about uh, getting the whole system to be in flow again. And we have blockages when we get afraid, or when we feel disrespected by someone, or we get angry about certain things. It's okay to have emotions like this. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to get angry, but it's whether that emotion stays there. And I like what you've said throughout the years, which is about closing a loop.
Yeah.
I'm correct in that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
why don't we close a loop? What's the problem? That anger shouldn't be going on and on and on and on. That fear shouldn't be going on and on and on and on. And when we are struggling in life, it's because it's like that. Now, I know we've got outward stresses in life. Everybody has. But equally, we can use these tools in order to grow and to be able to help to adapt to life, because life is constantly changing, like we're constantly
Yeah.
changing. So
Yep.
these tools will help us have more emotional mastery, so we're not in those completely overwhelmed states all of the time.
So let's talk about just your conventional talk therapy. Where is that helpful? I mean, I look at it as like conventional talk therapy is helpful if someone has some issues or trauma that has happened to them and they're just trying to understand it from a conscious perspective. Maybe they have some poor habits and they're trying to talk and say, "Hey, what can I do to bring in new habits in my life to help address whatever is going on?" Maybe they're running to drugs. Maybe they're running to risky behaviors, right? Maybe they're doing a lot of things that they know aren't good, but they're trying to get new habits in. I think that can be helpful to have and to create an awareness. Obviously, sometimes there's self sabotage that can disrupt a lot of these habits, and we can talk about that down the road. When do you find talk therapy helpful? And then when do you hit a wall with it?
It's a very good question. Well, when I'm doing a consult, I have to talk to the potential client beforehand, and the first few sessions will do a mix of both, because you've got to address the psychological and the emotional. So we're talking about thoughts, which is the psychological part, and feelings, which is the emotional part. When I'm working with people, I don't have a set pattern of working. It depends. Everybody's different. There's a famous doctor, and I can't remember his name, but he said, "I never treat a disease. I treat a patient, or I treat a
Yeah,
person."
yeah, I've heard
And
that
so I'm the
before.
same when anybody comes to see me, regardless of whatever label they've been given. I'm working with them in order to help them to grow. So I think the wall will be when I've occasionally picked up clients who've been, they might even still be in psychotherapy. Like I've had 4 years of psychotherapy and I don't want to stop going. But what is it that you do, and how can you help me? And that's because they can't. There was there was somebody I saw who was actually, they became an EFT practitioner. They trained as a psychotherapist, and she summed it up in as much as she said, "I can help somebody in one session using something like EFT, which would usually have taken me 10 sessions in
Yeah,
psychotherapy."
yeah. I mean, I look at conscious kind of talk therapy. Part of the benefit is a lot of people just bundle stuff up, and just the idea of talking about it and bringing it out does something. There, it is
Yeah,
cathartic. But okay, now
absolutely.
you've done that 3, 5, 10 times. You're continuing to talk about the same issue. Is there a pattern? Is there a habit in your life you have to neutralize? Okay, no, but you're still talking about it, it's still bothering you. Now we got to dig in deeper because there's probably some kind of subconscious kind of release. I mean, I look at it like it makes sense. Our nervous system is always trying to see patterns. Like if you live next to a forest, and this is hundreds of years ago, and the neighborhood kid got killed by a bear in that forest, you're probably going to be walking by that forest with lots of anxiety, or you may even not walk there because your nervous system is linked up death in that forest. So it makes sense why there would be anxiety because your body is trying to keep your nervous system on high alert so that doesn't happen to you because we're geared for survival. But now let's kind of prime that into I got in a car accident. I had a significant breakup with a spouse. Well, what are you going to do? Not get in your car again? Not have a relationship again? So that's where
Right,
you have these traumas. Like,
right.
well, now what am I going to do with that? Because I still want to get in my car and go to work or do what I have to do. So can you kind of
Absolutely.
address that a little bit?
How can we? Well, you've dressed it almost brilliantly just by summing it up. But we can't stay put. Life is a flow.
Mhm.
Trauma will happen, um, but we have to find ways of releasing those traumas. Um,
So let's pretend I have that issue. Let's just say I have a
okay,
trauma. I got in a car accident, right?
yeah,
I have this trauma. I go into my car. I come on the highway. I'm anxious. Maybe it's a plane. Maybe it's a car, right?
right.
My heart's going crazy. My blood pressure goes up. I'm feeling stressed. I'm breathing heavy. I'm coming to you for help. Walk me through that. Like, how does this interaction look?
Okay, so I would say on a 0 to 10, how much does that affect you?
I would
So
say it's affecting me 8, 9 out of 10. Every
yeah,
time I go in a car, I go on a plane. I am so stressed to get to where I have to go. It makes
and
me
most
not want to get in my car and get on a plane.
Absolutely. Most clients who come to see me, I get them to design a piece list. And that's a piece list
Hmm.
of things in the past, also things in the present, and maybe fears you've got in the future. And I would say put it down as a bullet point statement. I'm afraid of driving on the freeway, for example.
Yeah.
And then I'd say, right, give that a number, 0 to 10, and it would be either a 10 or a 9. Most people's piece list starts at that level. And we just start using these techniques and these tools to bring that 9 or that 10. Sometimes people will put down like 20, and I say, no, it could only be 10. No, no,
Only
no,
be 10,
it's a
right.
20 out of 10, I can
Yeah.
assure you. Um, And we're using these tools to bring that number down. Whereas conventional talking therapy would be saying, okay, so what is it specifically that you're afraid of when you're going on the freeway? With these techniques, you don't need to be consciously talking so much. So you can be tapping using something like EFT or another technique called havening. There's another
Yeah.
technique called EMDR. I do a version of that, which is called EMIT, eye movement integration therapy. There are
Yeah.
so many different things that you can use. And when you get your client to think about that thing that they are triggered by, so we're actually attempting to get you to go into your 8 or a 9 or a 10 and use these techniques, it directly works on the hippocampus, on the amygdala, on some part of the deep midbrain. There's some part where the unconscious stores memory, and it opens it up and it
And I
releases it.
noticed too, when you do that, right, you're essentially kind of engaging in talk therapy in a way. And it's
You are,
almost
to an
interesting because
extent.
if you engage in that talk therapy, you're almost bringing that person to that 8 or 9 or 10 by just talking about it. So you can see
Yeah.
to some certain degree when there is a trauma, sometimes just talking about it actually makes it worse if that's all you're doing. Right? Would you agree?
Yes, 'cause you can
Yeah.
thus re-traumatize yourself.
Yeah.
You're just if that number doesn't come down. But, like you've said before, which I agree with, sometimes you can just do, talking sessions with me and you just tap at the same time because it'll you're going to be triggering yourself by going back thinking about the
Mhm.
old event. And whilst you're tapping, for example, using the EFT technique, you're naturally relaxing yourself at the same time. We don't fully understand how it works. People have got various theories on it, and I'm more of a driver than a mechanic. So but I just use these techniques, and every single time I've been doing this now nearly 17 years in a small football stadium of clients, it works. And you don't question why it works. It's just like, okay, it works. Yeah, this is the technique. This is how you use
Yeah.
it. This is how
So I
you
find,
start.
like you mentioned, right? When I'm stressed and I feel the need, sometimes it's hard to go into visualization of what it is you want. You're just like you're pissed. You just want to vent out. And I find if you're just venting, just going through and tapping
Correct.
on some of these points while just talking about it, I think is very helpful. That's something that can be very good. Like if you're just on your own and you're talking to yourself about your boss just really ticked you off, you could just go into the bathroom and just tap for
Absolutely.
3 to 5 minutes. And I kind of
Absolutely.
like what you said, right? You kind of get that gauge of like, all right, I'm at 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. Try to get you below 5 or below 3 or so
Absolutely.
while you're processing it. Now, there's another component though. I do feel the accountability aspect is so important. So I know when you do a lot of this, there's a lot of incantation or just talking about the fact that I'm taking accountability and I accept myself. There's something cathartic and healing to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you
Totally.
talk more about that though? The accountability and the acceptance aspect and just accepting kind of where you're at in that space or time and healing.
Accountability works on every single level of your life. So why wouldn't it be any different to this work? It's the same doing what you do for a living and
Mhm.
what you're putting in your body. It's the same level of accountability to understanding that I can't live like this and I need to change. And I'm prepared to change and I will do whatever it takes to change until I get that change. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. I saw on there's a little message up here, but Inna
Yeah.
on Facebook, and I was just going to address that briefly because
Yeah.
it's kind of a similar thing. She's put, "Let's talk about losing love when your parents die." Well, it's the same thing, I've worked with clients sometimes, and they've never cried. They've never gone through uh, an emotional healing regarding the loss of a parent, and that emotion has been stored for 6 decades. And you start working on it, it might have been because their mother passed away and they were brought up by their great aunt, and the great aunt went, "No, that's enough of crying. No, your mother's gone now, and that's it."
Yeah.
Well, where's that emotion going to go? It doesn't just disappear. And they do say
Right.
time is a healer, but I'm sorry, I don't agree. There are emotions that need to come out and to be released. So I'm if you have lost your parents, I'm very sorry to hear that, but it's something that you have to um, realize that it's a process that you've got to go through. That there is a great saying: the only way out is through. The only
Yep.
way
True.
out is
Mhm.
through. We can't go round this problem. We can't go under it or over it and pretend it's not there. life is about this process of growth and transformation, and losing loved ones is part of that journey. And if you can go through that and use some of these techniques, but just the grieving process is so important. It's there's two great sayings also, that what you resist will persist, and what you don't feel, you can't heal. So by fully feeling these emotions and processing them, not just staying put, but processing them, really going into it and feeling that you're moving through it and you're going to the other side of it, because there's something on the other side of grief. There's a peace on the other side of fear. There is a peace on the other side of anger. There is a peace. All of these emotions, everything that we go through, there's something on the other side, and we must keep growing. We're either going upstream, we're clinging onto the riverbank, or literally we are, there we go, or we are going downstream. And we have to go downstream on every area in our life. It's about letting go and letting flow. That's how you move forward. That's how you grow. That's how you strengthen. That's how you start recognizing that life truly is abundant and it's okay. But most
So we
people
talk
get
about the
stuck.
5 stages of grief, right? This just
Like,
says divorce, but you can ignore it. It's the same stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
yeah,
When you're
that's the
applying, let's say, tapping, right?
right.
Or hypnosis or EMDR, and I'd like you to kind of talk a little bit about that and just kind of give an example about that in a minute. But like, where do you plug these techniques in when someone's going through this type of process? I mean, obviously, maybe denial, it may be a little bit hard, but how do you plug this into your treatment?
Yeah, most people who are in denial don't become clients.
Right.
People who are angry, they might well become clients. I probably pick clients up in the bargaining stage where they've done a great deal. They're not in
Mhm.
denial anymore. They're not in anger. This is actually the 5 stages of death and dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a brilliant Swiss American psychotherapist in the 70s and 80s. So when we get to a sort of more of a place of bargain, the bargaining is it's like, when I've talked about the riverbank, the bargaining is like, okay, I'm not going upstream anymore, but I'm equally not going downstream. And I'm going to let go a little bit, and then I might go upstream a bit, but then I'm going to cling onto the riverbank. So really, it's what is that? It's what was it? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Well, why would be depression part of that? Well, depression is because we have to fully let go, and we're going to get depressed because we don't want to fully let go, but we have to
Mhm.
fully go through that process and let go and let flow and go downstream, because bargaining doesn't work. Bargaining will
That makes
not
sense.
work. The mind will try and do it, but it won't work. We have to fully let go.
Makes sense. So I come into you, right? We're talking about the flying trauma or the
Right.
trauma in the car, right?
Yeah.
You have all these different techniques. We
Yeah.
have NLP, which is kind of, there's some element of hypnosis in there.
Correct.
We have hypnosis in general. You have tapping techniques, EFT, different variations on that. You have EMDR, doing the eye movement, which a lot of that can be combined with EFT. There's havening, there's other types of techniques. How do you blend these techniques? And can you kind of just give a brief overview of each technique and kind of why you've incorporated it into your kind of healing plan with patients?
Okay. The reason why is because they all work. And
Hmm.
I also work very intuitively. So I will sense sometimes that one technique is not necessarily going to work very well for some people. Some people really don't like tapping. They really don't like doing it, and they will prefer doing other techniques. So the tapping technique we've already talked about. Again, it releases stress. You're tapping on acupuncture points, which is acupressure points. And whilst doing that over a period of time, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, if you're doing it in a 90-minute session with me, my God, you're going to really shift a lot of stuff. The eye movements, that is partly in the EFT technique, but that is a separate technique in itself. I don't know whether you know this or not, but Gary Craig, who was the co-creator of EFT, which came
Hmm.
from thought field therapy, TFT, from
Hmm.
Dr. Roger Callahan, had studied
Hmm.
NLP. And so there are little bits of NLP in EFT, just in the way of you word things. Um, NLP stands for Neurolinguistic Programming. So that is the
Because there's
language
the
that,
part where you hit the gamut, right? You hit the gamut, and then you're doing the eyes, right?
right?
So that's kind of
Absolutely.
bringing in a little bit of the EMDR, right?
It's bringing in absolutely correct. Absolutely. And looking down hard left, looking down hard right,
Yeah,
rotate,
on the
rise all
right,
the way
yeah,
one way,
right.
rotate the other way. With
And that's
havening,
getting
they
different
just,
parts of the brain. People are like, "Oh, that's so weird," but what's that doing in the
right.
brain?
Okay. So what's it doing? So, all right. Okay. What I'd like you to do right now, everybody right now. Um, what did you do last night at 9 p.m.? Go back to that memory, right? What did Dr. J just do? He went up here. Look,
Got it.
everyone. He went up here. That's right. Because memory, what you were seeing something. So this is memory is generally associated to this side. So we go, oh, what was I doing? What did I see? What did I hear? And what would happen if your front door was painted yellow? I'm assuming you don't have a yellow front door. What would be that like? Most people would go up here because they would see this is visually constructed. And what would it sound like if you became like Mickey Mouse? You'd go to over here. So this is when you kind of sometimes pick up little cues and you think, someone's lying. They're not telling me the whole truth. What is it that they're saying? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So that's probably because when they're telling you a story about a memory, they're looking more over here and constructing it. We should be looking more over here. So this is why we use the eyes, because when we're talking about memory, we're talking about this. But equally, people will project fear into the future. And they might be seeing, oh my goodness. Well, let's use the freeway, for example. When I'm down the freeway, oh my God, well, what would happen in the if that happened, if the wheel came off like it came off before? And suddenly you've constructed this whole worst case scenario that doesn't exist, but it does exist in your mind because you're up here. It's in part of your unconscious is projecting that in the future.
And
So
also
really
too,
we're
I think
scrambling the memory and
mhm,
the future, and we're doing it all together while we're deeply relaxing you, and we're
yeah.
literally rewiring the brain while we're doing this.
Just talking about kind of eye movements and brain access, we know the left brain's kind of like more analytical. So
Right.
people that do behavioral stuff where they're reading people, the thought process is eyes going to the left are accessing the left brain, which is all
Yes.
about remembering, where the right brain's more creativity. So if you're telling a lie, you tend to go more to the right because you're trying
Right.
to make up that story
Yeah.
versus access memory, which is more analytical side. So people do that on
Absolutely.
the body language side to detect deceit.
Yeah.
Left typically more true, right, more creative. We're trying to figure out a lie, if you will.
Which is why when we're doing the EFT technique, we're humming for the creative right-hand side of the brain, and we're
Yeah.
counting, and we're doing, counting backwards. That's the
So
left-hand
you're
side.
constantly grabbing right and left side.
You're lighting
As
your brain up like a Christmas tree as much as you
yeah.
can. And so you're literally just thinking and getting the brain to really work. Um, and I've got really creative. Justin knows this because I've been very creative with him over the years doing various things. And so, like, I'll do things like, right, I'd like you to, when we're doing the left or right hand side brain hemispheres, I'll be sort of saying, okay, think of food groups and just start right now. They could be talking about something really traumatizing. And then I'll just go, right, okay, take a pause. Right, what number are we at now? And they might go, okay, I feel like at a 6. It's no longer a 9, but it's a 6. Excellent. Think of as many foods and just go up the alphabet. Apple, banana, please continue. And they're like, what? What am I doing? And suddenly the brain's lighting up in a completely different way where they're no longer talking about the trauma. And they're suddenly thinking about a carrot and a date and an egg and flour and all these things. And then, okay, brilliant. Well done. And now go back to the trauma. And we're going to talk about that again. And the brain's kind of really in this slightly confused place, which is what you want to do. You want to confuse it. There's something from NLP which they say we're always stuck in what we know. Think about that. We're always stuck in what we know. That's how we get stuck. Well, why won't you move any further forward? And the unconscious will have come up with, like, we talk about the map. The map is not the territory. So the past doesn't equal the future, but the unconscious is always saying, Well, it does, because it's the only thing that I've got reference to. So we're just really confusing it, and we're really lighting it up in all different types of ways.
That's
And it's
great.
brilliant, because sometimes people will go into the future and they'll go and do something that they were once afraid of, and they'll report back to me and they're like, "It was really strange. I went to go and do this thing that I'm normally afraid of, and suddenly I started thinking about what what food group begins with F." Brilliant. Okay, and 0 to 10, how afraid were you? And they were like, there was virtually no anxiety. But I was thinking, what is the food group with F? Brilliant. Great. Because what you're doing with, when we have a trauma, or when we have traumas, um, there's a you would say route, we say route over here. So there's a route that goes from the trauma all the way down, all the way into a kind of neural net, in order to then produce a response. But what if we could just change those paths? So we have so there's the trauma response, but then it doesn't go down the same paths anymore. It goes down all these other different paths, and some of those paths go to peace, go to well-being, they go to empowerment, they go to what's one of the things? It's flexibility. Uh, there's a saying that what's one of the famous things? Oh, it will come back to me in a second. It's something is it F? I don't know. Maybe I'm struggling with the F in the food group. It'll come back to me. But it's it wasn't F, it was R, resourcelessness. There's a lot of human beings. Why do we get stuck? Why do we struggle in life? We don't feel like we've got the resources. And a lot of that
Mhm.
comes from childhood. Why does it come from childhood? Because this is where you didn't have to have trauma in your childhood, but you might just have experienced limited, what I call limited belief conditioning. And then you come up to with just a resourcelessness as an adult. You just feel like you haven't got the resources. Why? You didn't suffer trauma. We're not looking for big trauma. It's just perhaps sometimes there's limited belief conditioning, which is we learn to become um, resourceless, that we haven't got the ability, and it's a complete lie, total lie. But the brain is going, no, no, we don't have the resources, so let's not even try. But like with what you said earlier about accountability, this is why you can recover from all different types of things. This is why you can get better. This is why you can become more confident and stronger, because you need to have that accountability with yourself, that you're not going to be this victim anymore. You're not going to struggle anymore. You're going to face this. And the only way out is through. And everybody's brain is capable of this wonderful word. Somebody's just put, oh, got it. Brilliant. Good. Uh, Neuroplasticity. You all know what that is, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the brain kind of rewiring pathways. And so essentially,
Absolutely.
when we have trauma, there's like, it's like you walk the path a certain way for 10 years. That path is clear, and you're going in there, you're doing all these things to scatter that path and then create a new path that's more efficient.
Absolutely.
And then the neuroplasticity is that new path being created.
Absolutely. What are we doing when we're healing? What are we doing when we're healing? The old neural pathways of dis-ease. Think about the word dis-ease, hyphenate it, unease. Got a big
Yeah.
$130 book there which talks about all the unconscious things of illness. Um, we we literally gonna wire our brain for health, wire our brain for peace, wire our brain for resource. What's the opposite of resourcelessness? Resourcefulness. Thank you.
Yeah. Resourcefulness. Yes.
Resourcefulness. So we become full of resources instead. We come up with options. We come up with um,
Abundant amount of resources.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can take action. And then you're gonna grow. Then you're gonna move forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is just looking at whatever trauma that I have right here in front of me. It's a healing potential. There's a growth behind it.
Yes,
Anytime the darkest happens in your life, the dawn is right behind. So you have to look at every opportunity as the ability to grow stronger. It's like
absolutely.
the reason why you get strong in the gym is you get a little bit weaker, and the next 2 days you get a little bit stronger. And so if you look at
Yes.
it like that and you don't take the victim path, you say, what can I do to get stronger? Now, in the physical realm, it may be sleep, hydration, maybe good food, nutrition, right? But then in the emotional realm, if it's really provoking and really stirs up trauma, we have these different techniques. And that's where it's excellent to have these in your emotional toolbox, if you will.
Absolutely.
What's
Absolutely.
something that people can just do at home? Like, obviously, they have some issues. They need a practitioner to kind of help guide them. One thing is just a little detour. I find people that are like, oh, I tried tapping before and it didn't really help. The problem with that is I find you have this issue, you think this is the issue, but you really need someone to kind of guide you a little bit more back in time because this may be the issue that's causing this. And sometimes it's painful to explore these other deeper issues that
Yeah.
could be the root issue. And sometimes you need someone to help guide that because intuitively, I don't want to go there because it hurts a little bit to go there. And so
Yes.
that's where I find sometimes, hey, I have this outward manifestation that I think is the problem, but it may not really be the issue. And sometimes you need some guidance to go through that and hit it from a lot of different angles.
Absolutely. What was the question with that? Forgive me. I
Oh,
went.
yeah. I think it's just people that say, well, I did this once because I watched a YouTube video and that didn't work.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, it's a good question, but I'll be honest. Like when I first came into EFT, I had this amazing. My meditation and Tai Chi teacher just sort of said, "Oh, you're struggling with some anxiety." I learned this technique on a beach. This is like the early 2000s. This was like, it cost her a lot of money to do back then. And I had a euphoric experience because Justin knows, like when you do tapping, it's like, whoa, you can yawn, you have tear ducts open sometimes, you're not crying,
Yeah. Yeah.
something's happening. It's like some energy is moving. This is a positive thing. And it was a great experience the first time. But then I thought, brilliant, this is going to be great. This is going to be easy. I'll just be using this technique and I'm going to manifest anything I want and I'm going to be moving forward and it's going to be great. Except it wasn't as great when I worked but on myself because the unconscious does something called sabotage. Why
Yeah.
does the unconscious sabotage? Because the unconscious doesn't want to go to these new places. The unconscious
It's
is
not familiar. It's scary.
it's stuck in what it knows. And you remember what I said before? We're always stuck in what we know. So when you're working with a practitioner, when you're working with someone, they're coaching you in order to be able to move forward to the outcome that you wish to be moving towards too. And they're going to hold you accountable even more so than yourself. So you've got a double dose. If you're fully accountable and you're working with a coach who's helping you to become accountable, it's like 200% accountability. You're going to be moving further towards your outcome. I had experiences like this, but I would say deeply intuitively that I knew that it was an unconscious issue and I knew that I had to continue to address the unconscious. Nobody's issue is ever too big. Like literally, we've talked about this in the last few weeks about small steps. It may be that what you're trying to do is use this technique on something that's an enormous issue, and you're able to maybe do 5% effect on what it is. And then you can go, well, it doesn't work. It's 5%. I haven't got anywhere. That was my experience when I started doing it by myself. And it wasn't until I worked with practitioners did I start getting real sort of shifts forward. And I started then beginning to understand my brain, how to be able to move forward, how to coach myself. This is something that I do actually, which is I say I coach people to coach themselves. And so you can begin to, there's a good phrase, which is learn how to master your mind rather than have your mind master you.
Right.
Because the mind wants to master us all of the time. It's
Right.
constantly trying to sort of be boss.
Makes sense.
And so, yeah, I hope that explains it. I do understand that when some people come into this, they'll go, well, I've tried it. It's no good. And it may be
Well,
that literally you're so toxic with so much stuff that it would be a bit like, I remember my acupuncturist once saying to me, he talked about, he said I needed to drink more water. And he said, it's going to take a while for that to affect you. He said, if you poured a pint glass of water over a desert, it will just run off.
yes.
It's going to
Totally
take a
makes sense.
long time for that to really be saturated. And it's the same with these kind of issues. Like the unconscious can be so protective of itself, you start doing these techniques and it will be like water off a duck's back. It's not getting really in there. It's doing something to the surface, but it's not getting in there. And that's where we literally have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And we're softening up that ground. We're softening up that unconscious. It's because it's like medieval castle. It's got the portcullis down, it's got the drawbridge up. It's like going, no, 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 no one's getting in here. No one's getting in here. Not
Yeah.
even EFTs getting in
Yeah.
here.
Well,
I
it's
am
just the
super
idea that
resistant.
if you went to the gym and you're like, I want big biceps, and you did one set, a couple sets for one workout, you wouldn't be like, hey, I want rock solid,
Absolutely.
biceps. There's got to be an expectation. There's only so much you can receive. And I kind of look at, I heard this analogy years ago. It's the pickle jar analogy. Take a pickle jar, you empty it out, go fill that pickle jar with rocks, right? You fill it up to the brim. Is that full? Well, you think it's full, but yeah, it looks full. Okay, now let's try pebbles after
Yeah, I
it's
saw
full.
that on
Oh, I can
TikTok the
get
other
some
day.
pebbles in there.
Yeah.
I can get some pebbles. Okay, cool. I can get more in there. You think, all right, is it full now? Yes, now it's full. Now try sand. Okay, you get some sand in there. Okay, great. Is it full? Sure. Now it's 100% full. Nope. Now put some water in. And it's like, so
There's a
there's a
little bit
different
more.
level of
There's
granularity
a
that you
little
can
bit
get to
more
a higher level each and every time.
every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I
And we're
like
all
that. That
like
makes a lot
this.
of sense.
We're all like this. I'm still working on myself. I'm nearly 49. I'm still working on myself, but it's okay. It's a wonderful process. It's like you look after yourself. It's like it just becomes part of a way of being. Yeah, it gets easier. Like everything, it gets easier. To start with, to begin with, it's like it's always going to feel, it's going to be painful, it's going to be scary, it's going to be daunting, but it gets easier. It gets easier.
That makes a lot of sense. That's very good. So outside of that, we have a couple other techniques I wanted to hit. We kind of hit the EMDR. Is there anything else you want to highlight with that? I know you do a lot of stuff where you kind of created your own techniques where you do like the clock face or you really make those eyes
Right.
move in a lot of different directions. Anything else you wanted to comment on regarding EMDR and kind of how you use that?
I don't think so. I use EMIT, not EMDR, but it's very, very
Okay.
similar.
Yep.
There's so many different techniques that you can use. I will sometimes occasionally just, if the issue is quite stuck and everything that I've done isn't working, it's you can just start using the eye movements in a slightly different way. Um, and Occasionally you'll get there. It's the same with the tapping. I've heard if you go to sort of the nine gamut, some
Yep.
people don't do that. They just do, like, I don't know if anybody's done EFT, but they'll do the EFT technique and they'll finish where they tap under the arm and they never go to the fingers or they never go to here. This is a central meridian. This is called the triple warmer, the Sanyao. Is that
Yep.
Sanyao? Is it? But anyway, it's the nine gamut triple warmer, and it's connected with the heart meridian, and it's a central meridian, so it's going to work on so many different areas. So it's in between the ring finger and the little finger. It doesn't matter which hand, and it's about 2 centimeters down. You take two fingers here and just tap here. And you can do that whilst using the eyes. If you go left, you go right, you go down, you go down, you go up, up. You can go all the way around one way. You can go all the way the other way. You can do a big Z. You can do a backward Z. You could do a wave. You could go this way. At some point, something shifts. Like I said at the top of the call, these things are meant to be released. The unconscious actually wants to release them. It's just afraid of doing so, but it's part of the necessary process. I don't know. Have you ever seen how the ice caps are melting and the polar bears uh,
Hmm.
are are in less numbers than ever before? Well, whether you agree with it or not, but there's a video on YouTube, and you can see there are rangers in a helicopter, and they're going after this polar bear with a dart gun. Have you seen that video?
Not
Okay, so the polar bear is an apex predator. There's no predators for the polar bear, right?
right.
It's like the lion in the jungle. So there's no predators. The only
Right.
predator is man.
Right.
So there's no predators of that. I don't think guys go out there or people go out there and kill polar bears. But for the first time, it doesn't know the difference between, it's not going to be shot. It's a dart gun. But just from the process of witnessing trauma being released, You can see this polar bear running away from this helicopter. They dart it. It eventually relaxes and succumbs to the anesthetic. And you witness the polar bear shaking when it's starting to come to. And they say it's okay. What it's doing now is releasing trauma. And that's what we have all
Hmm.
lost. We've lost this ability to discharge trauma as a species. They say the only animals that don't discharge trauma are human beings, zoo animals, and pets. So wild animals will have an instinctive way of discharging trauma, and that's um, there is something called trauma release exercises, tray, and you can actually bring on the shaking part of which is your witness, which is what the polar bear is doing. It's another part of releasing trauma. People who have done microdoses of psychedelics will report that the tear ducts open and they shake sometimes as well. So that's part of um, a natural response to releasing trauma. Now we can do that
By
in
the way,
something called
I just want to
tray.
interject one thing here because you said something really important.
Go
People
on.
talk about like, oh, I did ketamine, oh, I did like ayahuasca, these different kind of
Yeah.
medicinal medicines, and that just totally allowed me to release all my trauma. How does that work? Is there something to that? I mean, my big concern is, I would think you need someone to kind of guide you through that process because I think just taking a drug and it altering your brain state, there has to be some guidance to address it. How do you split that? How does that work compared to what you're doing?
It's okay, so it's similar, but again, like you've said, you're not going to be guided. And the danger with that, and there is a danger with everything. And so the danger with that is that your unconscious is going to dump too much too soon.
There'll be some
And
hallucination too, right?
that you could literally bring on depersonalization,
Mhm.
all different types of things. It's like eating a meal too much too soon. It's like massive meal. I mean, we've all got stuff. Even I've got stuff, and I've been working on myself for 2.5 decades, and I've got less stuff than I ever have, but I've still got stuff. And that's because I'm a human being, because I have gone through life through this process where I haven't literally shaken off every trauma that I've ever experienced in my entire life. So
How does
it's
that work though? Just kind of comparing what you're doing to someone that's like, "Oh, I'm gonna just do some ketamine. Oh, I'm gonna do some ayahuasca, and that's gonna resolve my trauma." What's the difference there? And can it be beneficial?
did you say, can it be beneficial?
Yeah,
I don't mind saying I have done ayahuasca, and I've done ayahuasca retreats
yeah,
as well, and I've witnessed people on that path they still got to, you've still got to do the inner work. It's not just taking something and then it's like it's all going to be done. You still have to. I mean, we haven't even talked about the enneagram, which is part
right.
of psychological. It's part of psychological well-being. That is, it's to do with the mind. But it's not a one-stop shop that I'm just going to take this and then everything's going to be better. When I took ayahuasca, for example, I didn't have any release. What I experienced was a lot of peace. It could be really great for, I mean, people who've been addicted to marijuana, even just general smoking, drinking. It can be very helpful. I think, well, a lot of these things you've got to be. I would encourage people, go to where you're drawn, go to where you feel a pull. Clients sometimes when they work with me, they say that they're pulled to work with me. It was the same when I did all my studies. I was pulled to go and do my studies in London. Someone said, "Am I in London?" No, I'm not in London. I'm in the home of Led Zeppelin, which is a little town called Kidderminster. That's, you can go and research that. But I see people
It's the same
online.
time zone. You're still 0 GMT, correct?
Oh, but there we go. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's it. People trying to
I'm
figure out time
online
zone
now,
thing.
like Dr. J. I don't see clients in person anymore, so everything's online. I work around the whole world. Um, but yeah, it's not gonna. I was drawn to doing it, and it was beneficial, but it's not the only answer. There are so many different answers to experiencing greater psychological well-being and greater emotional well-being. It can be beneficial. If you're drawn to going to do it, it can be beneficial, but you need to be aware that potentially, particularly if you're doing it unguided, you might bite off a lot that, and you've then got to digest that. When you're doing this work, it becomes more easily digestible. I often work in 6-month packages to 12-month packages. So that's like change is going to be occurring in that time frame. Also, I met a lot of people with still an enormous amount of trauma. And sometimes they would take something like this, even when they're guided. And it was such a thing for the unconscious to suddenly deal with. It was like they literally needed putting back together after doing it. It's an enormous thing. I think I was only drawn to it after I did a significant, and I mean significant, amount of inner work already, that I felt prepared to go to this next level and this next stage. It's not for everybody. It's not the complete and utter answer. Even the shaman, for example, I was a nice guy, but I wasn't thinking that's a highly evolved being. I still thought there was work there and work to do, and he'd done a lot of ceremonies and a lot of things. Um, I know psilocybin is now legal in a few states in America. I think is it California and Colorado, I
Maybe.
think. Again, it's going to work on the unconscious, but you're talking, you've got to do these things with a great deal of respect. And again, it's that we're coming back to that accountability. You're going to go in to do something and you need to be prepared for what will happen. Like when people are working with me, I fully respect what they're doing and what they're entering into. It's life-changing and it's difficult and it's hard and it's a process, but it's worth it.
Hmm. Very good. Anything else people listening can do at home? Just a simple exercise that can be done on their own to help address
Okay,
whatever's going
so
on in their life that's difficult.
well, someone's put down here meditation, mindfulness. Again, that's an enormous part of what it is that I do as well. It's important to still the mind. Anything that will help to still your mind, practices that still your mind. It's what actually got me into this in the first place. I was going to a meditation group, and then the leader of the meditation group talked about doing EFT. Things that ground you into your body as well. Anything that, yoga or even cold water immersion therapy could be really
Yep.
great.
Even
Opening the
exercise, just
heart,
just just moving,
gratitude.
just moving too.
Moving, absolutely, absolutely. It can be extremely, you can go for a fantastic walk in nature and just getting the body moving. All these things that we kind of like, you and I probably take for granted now, but other people, they might be working behind a desk for 8, 9 hours a day, and then they go home in a car sitting down and they go and sit on a sofa. Okay, well, what part have you got your heart rate over 100 beats per minute at all? To 120? All these things, there's lots of
Yeah, no,
things. There's lots of things.
I like it.
Self-compassion, someone's put up there. Yeah.
That's very
Yeah.
good. I like it. Well, put the links down below if anyone wants to reach out to you, Daniel, to have a discovery call or kind
Okay.
of dive in
Thank
deeper
you.
to kind of have
Cool.
someone guide them, right? No one goes to hike Mount Everest on their own, right? They're typically going to get some Sherpas and some local people to guide them along the way because there's a
Yes.
lot of obstacles. And then what do you do when you're halfway up and you're stuck, right? So it's always good
Mhm.
to have someone guiding you in the process that's done it hundreds of times or thousands of times with other people beforehand. So I think that's always good. Good to have that mindset. We'll put the links and coordinates down below in the link description. Anything else, Daniel, you want to leave the listeners with? You want to give your social media coordinates, website coordinates?
Yeah, you can just put Daniel Hill Coaching. You'll find me on YouTube. You'll find me on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the usual suspects. I'm out there. There's a lot. I've got hundreds of videos out there. I've been doing it a long, long time now. Started in 2006, so I'm a bit of a veteran these days. I've got the gray hair to prove it.
I would say just to leave the listeners with one last thing is really monitor your self-talk. Be a Make sure you would be a friend to your inner voice. In other words, most people would never be friends with someone that talked to them the same way their inner voice did. Think of all the
Absolutely.
doubts and negativity your inner voice may have with you. Imagine that's someone on the outside of your life, a real person. If that real person talked down to you and was that negative to you, you'd probably be like, "You're crossing my boundaries. I'm done. You're out of my life," right?
Yeah.
But you would accept that inner voice. So make sure that inner voice is someone that you would be friends with if they were in your life in reality. Just keep that in mind. So when that
That's
inner voice comes in, make
brilliant
sure you be
advice.
willing to be friends with that inner voice.
Yes,
I think that's important.
absolutely.
I think it's where a lot of the NLP stuff comes in because it really looks at the pictures that you're having in your mind
Yes, and realizing that everything,
and
even
that
the
voice.
even the bad voice has positive intention. We sort of think, this all this bad stuff is happening to us, but there's positive intention behind it. And a lot of that bad voice is sabotage. It's wanting you to believe limitations because then you'll be safe. It doesn't want to expand and grow and all that because it's fraught with potential danger if we move beyond what we know. So I think that's really good. Something I summed up a phrase of: you cannot outperform the unconscious mind. If you think of every sports person who has a limitation and they almost win a major, or they get the the yips in golf or something like whatever. There's an unconscious sabotage pattern in there. So you can't outperform it. So if we're not going to outperform it, what we're going to do, we're going to work with it. You have to work with it. So that negative voice in the head, you know, we've got to work with it and we have to integrate it. It's only a part that's afraid, that feels unresourceful. We work with it, not against it.
Love it. Awesome, Daniel. Thanks so much. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, guys, links down below if you want to reach out deeper. Again, thanks, Daniel, for being on the show. Guys, have
Bye,
a good day.
everyone.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.